Callan instinctively looked behind him, convinced the woman in the elegant navy suit must have been calling for someone else. The employees crossing the courtyard slowed their pace, equally surprised to see the famously reserved billionaire CEO hurrying across the polished stone walkway beneath the bright afternoon sun. When Celestine finally reached him, she paused only long enough to catch her breath before offering a warm smile that carried none of the distance people usually associated with powerful executives. She had not come to apologize for the interview, nor had she come to offer empty sympathy. She simply wanted one more conversation with the man who had quietly stopped to help another human being after believing his own future had just fallen apart. Callan followed her back into the building with cautious uncertainty. Inside a private conference room overlooking the city, Celestine asked him to forget rehearsed interview answers and instead tell her the story behind the years that were missing from his resume. This time there were no managers taking notes, no ticking clock, and no pressure to impress anyone. There was only one person genuinely listening. Callan spoke honestly about losing his wife, about becoming both mother and father overnight, about declining promotions because they would have stolen precious hours from his son, and about working any respectable job that allowed him to be home before sunset. He admitted there had been evenings when he skipped meals so Nolan would never know the pantry was nearly empty. He confessed that the hardest part had never been poverty but the fear that one day his son might believe he had failed him. As Callan spoke, Celestine remained silent, yet every sentence stirred memories she had spent years burying beneath board meetings and billion-dollar decisions. She remembered growing up with parents who measured success only in profits and prestige. They had rarely attended school events, birthdays, or family dinners because business always came first. She inherited their empire but also their loneliness. Despite possessing more wealth than she could ever spend, she often ate lunch alone in a glass office overlooking thousands of employees she barely knew. Listening to Callan, she realized that the man sitting across from her possessed something her fortune had never been able to be: a life guided by love instead of status. She thanked him sincerely and admitted that the interview panel had evaluated his experience correctly according to company policy. Yet policies, she explained, could never fully measure character. She believed organizations succeeded because of people whose values inspired everyone around them. Before making any promises, she invited Callan to spend the rest of the afternoon walking through several departments with her. She wanted him to observe the company honestly and share anything he believed could be improved. Most applicants would have praised everything they saw, hoping to impress the CEO. Callan did the opposite. He complimented what genuinely worked but also noticed practical issues others ignored. He observed warehouse employees making unnecessary trips because equipment had been arranged inefficiently. He noticed new staff members looked nervous because supervisors were too busy to train them properly. He pointed out that reception employees smiled professionally yet seemed exhausted from covering responsibilities meant for larger teams. His suggestions were respectful, thoughtful, and surprisingly detailed. More importantly, he greeted every cleaner, receptionist, security guard, and maintenance worker with the same respect he showed executives. During a lunch break in the bright company courtyard, he quietly picked up a plastic bottle someone had dropped beside a flower bed without expecting praise. To Callan, responsibility was never connected to job titles. Celestine watched every moment carefully. By late afternoon she no longer questioned whether he belonged at Sterling Horizons. The only question remaining was where he could create the greatest impact. Instead of offering him the position he had originally applied for, she surprised him with something completely unexpected. She invited him to become Director of Employee Operations, a newly created leadership role focused on improving workplace culture, training, and communication across every department. It came with a salary that exceeded anything Callan had earned before: comprehensive healthcare, flexible daytime hours, and educational support for Nolan. For several seconds he could not speak, his eyes filled with tears he had spent years refusing to shed in front of strangers. Every rejection, every exhausting temporary job, every sleepless afternoon wondering how he would pay the next month's rent suddenly felt worthwhile because none of those hardships had changed the person he chose to be. That evening, while the golden afternoon sunlight still filled their modest apartment, Callan unlocked the front door carrying groceries he had not been able to afford for months. Nolan ran toward him with his usual hopeful smile, searching his father's face before asking the question he had waited all day to ask. Callan knelt beside his son, wrapped him tightly in his arms, and quietly whispered that everything was going to be all right. Nolan smiled so brightly that the tiny apartment seemed transformed. He did not ask about salaries or job titles. He only thanked God that his father looked happy again. The following weeks brought changes neither of them expected. Callan refused to let success change his habits. He still rode public transportation during his first month, still greeted everyone by name, and still arrived early enough to help security staff prepare entrances before employees arrived. Gradually, people throughout Sterling Horizons noticed something different. Departments that rarely cooperated began solving problems together. Employee turnover decreased. Productivity improved naturally because workers felt respected rather than managed. One afternoon Celestine walked anonymously through several offices and overheard employees discussing Callan. None mentioned his impressive résumé or executive position. Instead, they spoke about the day he stayed late helping a new receptionist organize paperwork, about how he remembered birthdays, and about how he always listened before making decisions. For the first time in years, Celestine understood that the strongest leaders rarely demanded loyalty. They earned it through everyday kindness. Months later the company hosted its annual Family Appreciation Day under clear blue skies at a beautiful outdoor park. Hundreds of employees arrived with spouses, children, and parents. Games, music, and laughter filled every corner. Instead of delivering another speech about profits and expansion, Celestine stood before the crowd and shared a simple lesson. She admitted that she had nearly allowed one extraordinary man to walk out of her company forever because a résumé seemed imperfect. She reminded everyone that experience could be listed on paper, but compassion, resilience, integrity, and love revealed themselves only through actions. She thanked Callan publicly not merely for improving the company, but for reminding its leadership what success truly meant. The audience rose in heartfelt applause while Nolan watched proudly from the front row, clapping harder than anyone else. In that beautiful afternoon moment, Callan realized his greatest achievement had never been receiving a prestigious job. It had been choosing, day after day, to remain kind when life had given him every reason to become bitter. His son had witnessed that choice every single day, and now an entire company was learning from the same example. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness can open doors that qualifications alone never will, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Hub. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that inspire compassion and second chances. Special request: before you leave, please comment, "Kindness always finds its way." If you believe that a good heart is never wasted, even when the world seems to overlook it. As the warm afternoon sun slowly settled across the city skyline, Callan and Nolan walked home side by side, not because they had finally become wealthy, but because they had discovered something even more valuable. Life may delay its blessings, opportunities may disappear without warning, and heartbreak may leave scars that never fully fade. Yet every act of honesty, every sacrifice made out of love, and every moment of kindness quietly plants a seed. Sometimes that seed blooms in ways no one could ever imagine. And on the day a defeated single father walked away from what he believed was another failure, destiny simply asked him to keep walking for a few more steps because hope was already running after him. The end.